Hi, everyone. And let me say something that might mess you up just a little bit. A lot of people don't fail because they lack courage. They fail because their courage has no container. Yes, they say yes, and then they don't have a system to sustain it. They take that leap and then they break underneath the weight of their own growth. And today's episode is for the person who's not scared to move, but you're just scared that you won't be able to hold what you're building. And my guest today, Celeste Shields, is the kind of woman who doesn't just motivate you to jump, she shows you how to actually land. So, welcome to the Power of Yes, Coach Servola. And this season is the courage to say yes. And we're talking about what it takes to move from comfort. Comfort is calling you to stay put. So, today I am joined by Celeste Shields, the founder of Celestial Operations, and she is a fractional COO and strategist who supported over 50 startup. Story is powerful because it wasn't impulsive, it was intentional. Celeste, here's what I need my listeners to understand. And I'm so happy to have you in this season. I really needed you to be a part of what we're doing this season because I think that a lot of my listeners, as they are navigating, experiencing all of these different things. I have folks that are purpose driven, they are faith driven, but they are carrying this weight of the yes in their heart. But the question that they're secretly asking themselves is, what if I say yes and I can't sustain it? I want to start right there. Welcome, Celeste. I'm
Thank
so
you
happy
so
to have you.
much. No, I'm super happy to be here. I remember there was a year when I saw the name of this podcast, it resonated deeply because I'm someone who, when I start a new year, I like to think of a word that I focus on. And I know that I've been doing this for a bit now. And I remember this was maybe 7 or 8 years ago where my word was, it was such a special year. And I've come back to that word to just really be intentional. I'm happy to be here, experience that I could support others because that's really part of my ethos is supporting visionary folks.
Well, let's just hop into it. So I want you to
Yes.
take me to a moment where you knew that you weren't dreaming anymore, when you shifted from one day to actually, I am doing this.
I was dreaming for a while about having my own business. I was dreaming for starting my own business for quite a while, more significantly and strategically, probably for the year prior. But I always knew I wanted to have my own business. I always knew that if there was a way that I can support entrepreneurs in a greater capacity, contractually, be my own boss. I mean, I remember talking about that even shortly after college. So I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but it was a dream I had for a while. And when I got to the point where I knew that I was not dreaming anymore, probably wasn't even until after a full year of me having my business. Because that first year, there were so many trial and errors. I was like pinching myself every day that I was my own boss. I was like, can I just go and run an errand or grab a coffee in the middle of the day? You have your own schedule, you're in charge. So probably after about a year, when I really felt like, okay, I know what my services are. I wasn't just taking any job anymore. I was really intentional with how I was going to do business development. When I hit a year of my business, I have to do something else. Like I was fully supporting my lifestyle with my business. That's truly where I would say that I was like, oh, I'm in it. And I have a lot of trouble celebrating those wins. It's really my friends. I told them, I was like, oh, I just hit a year. They were like, that's amazing. And then I got to sit in it and I was like, this is what I was dreaming of 10 years ago. I said, for me, I opened my LLC. That was when I felt like I wasn't dreaming anymore. But the reality is when I was in it for about a year, that's when I felt really good about it.
I love it. This is a journey. And I think a lot of people who step into
Hmm.
entrepreneurship don't recognize it. Some of them recognize it initially if they've had entrepreneurial people in their lives as they walk this journey. Some of them it's a little bit different if they came to the workforce and went into entrepreneurship and they don't really understand the journey of entrepreneurship. Just you have those moments where they're really significant, but you look at them as small. And we have a lot of times when we see social media, we see people's lives, we see the clips of what was great. These are the awesome things that have
Hmm.
happened. We don't see behind the scenes where things were heavy and they were murky and they were just muddy. We were in that space where we didn't know what we were going to do next. I want to understand what was happening in your life that made staying feel heavier than leaving.
I transitioned to starting my business because when I was staying at my last full time job, it was heavier because While I made so many rich connections, I really loved the work I was doing. I was making a significant impact. It was in the social impact space. I really enjoyed it. What was heavier was just not having the flexibility that I wanted, being able to work from home, being able to travel more and work abroad, being able to do things that fulfill my soul. It was outweighing. I wasn't receiving that in the way I wanted to. So it was heavier to stay. And I remember that year so vividly. The year I realized, okay, what is the exit strategy? And do I do it? I'm being completely honest. I can understand what's on the other side. I'm so nervous. I've never started my own business. Who am I to think people are going to hire me contractually? And how am I going to support myself? But staying was heavier because on the other side was all this opportunity. It was the
Yeah.
flexibility I was looking for. It was me knowing that my skill set could be really good at adapting on a consultative capacity from project to project or client to client versus just fully focusing on one company. But it's always who's going to hire me. And in that
Mhm.
last year, I felt like I was going to be more intentional with, okay, obviously I'm scared to do this. The staying is becoming heavier, but how can I empower myself to leave with the support of people in my network and my therapist, being strategic with what kind of moves I could or would make and being more intentional about building my network. So that was a moment I would say the staying got heavier and heavier in that last 6 months to a year being at that company.
Mhm.
And that was me trying to then be strategic of, okay, how can I set myself up for success? Because my biggest fear is who's going to hire me. And I just started building my network at that point.
I love it. A lot of people think that the leap is the story, but really the juicy part, the months that led up to that leap that
Mhm.
you took. You prepared 6 to 9, 12 months ahead of
Yeah,
time for where you really wanted to go. And I think that a lot of people, when we hear the stories of people taking the leap, we don't about that preparation part. I know for me,
right.
when I made that transition to move from working for the government to stepping into my business on a full-time basis, it was unconventional decision because most people are like, I'm not leaving my good old government job. It's I would say as a part of that journey, it was very intentional for me from the perspective of, hey, this is something I really know that I'm going to do, and really taking those steps to make it come into fruition. And so
Right.
I love the fact that you were like, hey, I'm sold on this. I'm going to bet on me. I'm
Hmm.
gonna bet on my success, but I'm not just going to talk about it. I'm gonna set myself up for success. I heard you say that by
Hmm.
creating a plan, but also I the vulnerability here where you're saying, hey, it took me a lot of therapy sessions to work through this. Because I recognize a lot of people don't even recognize that that is a whole part of the process. You have to,
100%.
this is a mental shift when you make these types of life decisions. And so having that moment to be able to talk it through and really get your mindset around where you were going, why you were doing what you were doing, and then
Mhm.
framing those thoughts around who's going to hire me, who is going to seek me out, getting rid of that imposter syndrome and recognizing that you have something of value that you are offering to the community and they're going to buy it because they need your value. Now I can get
Yeah.
into that all day long, but I want to
No, that's
tap
right.
into what were some of those first things you went through that mental preparation to get even? What were
Mhm.
some of the other things that you did in order to really move you in the direction of jumping into that business?
One of the first things I did was I was not gonna quit my full-time job until I had at least one paying client. I had been doing a little bit of free work on the side with just friends who are
Mhm.
entrepreneurs, helping them out, helping them help me create a framework of how I might support an entrepreneur. And then I remember I said, I want to get one paying client. I don't care if it's $20. Someone who feels like monetary dollars could be paid to give them a service. And I was able to do that. I was able to have a paying client. And even though it was a project, then it closed out, network of just asking people, would you hire me? I started literally just asking entrepreneurs in my network that maybe weren't close entrepreneurs. So to be clear, in that year before I started my business, I was focused on figuring out how I could serve, getting some free work, and then closing at least one paying client. In the year that I launched my business, 6 months before was when I started getting really intentional with just not being afraid to ask people in my network who I wasn't super close with and saying, here's what I'm thinking. And I knew I would probably start it sometime that year. I just didn't know exactly when. And I started just asking people, here's what I'm thinking. Is this a pain point you've seen for yourself, for other entrepreneurs? and a resounding across the board for operations was in 2022. This is before AI was booming. So
Right.
people did not have a really good understanding of how can I make this more integral into my startup without breaking the bank a six-figure salary. And when I would
Mhm.
explain that value to them, they were like, oh, yes, we need this. We need this. We're all visionaries. We need this. And so that validation, classic customer discovery, was me saying, okay, someone paid me for this. I have an idea. And all these people in my network are saying they would hire someone like me. Now, when I activate it, now I can tap back into all those folks, have the coffee chats, have the quick calls, have the check ins. So that was my way of being very, I needed to have someone who was going to pay me. That was one of my non starters before I quit. And from there, it was the other thing was just starting to ask other entrepreneur friends of mine, how do you set up an LLC? What's an EIN?
Mhm.
How do I get it? How do I get a business name? The real stuff that no one really talks about as an entrepreneur. But these were also questions I wanted to make sure I had an idea. I was like, should I use LegalZoom? Should I? A friend of mine who was an entrepreneur, he was like, no, you can just go to the Secretary of State. You can do it all online. He showed me how to do everything. And I was able
Right.
to do it that way. So getting all these ducks in a row helped me feel like, okay, I'm going to do this. Like I'm going to say yes. And the last thing I will say that even ties into another time I said yes, not another time, but just in general, things about saying yes, taking the leap, quitting the job, starting the thing. The timing was very questionable for me. And at the time when I was like, when should I do it? I had just got an opportunity to sublet a friend's house in Spain over the summertime. And I was like, is this
Wow.
serendipitous or what? Because I was thinking of maybe the fall timeline to start, and I was like, I could do a sabbatical, quit, be there for a little bit, build up the business. And then, believe it or not, I had my first client when I came back from Spain. So I did 2 months in
Wow.
Spain, was still having calls with folks and even got an offer, turned it down because it wasn't super aligned. So I felt like the energy of, okay, I said yes, now things are coming through. But I knew I wanted to be abroad for a little bit and take a beat from the grind of 3 4 years of full-time work. Saying yes at that moment, you just have to trust truly, because those 2 months helped me just feel so much more connected to the decision I had made. And I closed the client while I was there and started with them within a week of being back from Spain.
I love.
So you really never know.
So if you're listening and you've been feeling called to do this, but you're feeling like, oh, I'm stuck, I want you to consider what Celeste is saying here. You might not be stuck. You might need preparation. You might need to
Mhm.
put a plan in place. You might need to talk some things through with your tribe and help them to help you to navigate the fear or all the things. I love the fact that you were like, let me lean into people who are already doing this, who have already stepped into this so that they can mentor me through this process.
100%.
And I think a lot of people are scared to say, I don't know how to do a business banking account. I don't know if I'm supposed to do this. I don't know something like this. The greatest thing that you can do is ask questions and step
Mhm.
in with no abandonment. Just go for it and really just be a student of what you're doing and just open your eyes and say, I may be afraid. Fear might be in the path, but I think I'm going to do this anyway. And that's what I was
100%.
hearing throughout what you were saying was, hey, fear was there. It didn't disappear. I still stepped into it. And what I did to navigate that fear was I prepared myself. I made sure that I was able to be as ready as I possibly could by just doing all the things and trusting the people around me and what they're sharing with me to help me to move further faster. So
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
want to shift into a little bit of understanding how to navigate the fear. I know you prepared for the fear, but I want to understand some of the things that being afraid of during that time beyond just the will somebody hire me? Were there
Mhm.
other fears that were rolling up, bubbling up to the top of your mind as you were saying it? Because I mean, you sublet someone's house in Spain and seeing all those things come into motion at one time.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if there was anything in the back of your mind that was like, oh my God, am I really doing this? Is this really happening? Should I be doing
Yeah.
this?
I was scared the whole time. I was scared the entire time, especially those 2 months in Spain. I remember calling a friend of mine who's also in the world and does a ton of things. At the time was doing consulting. And I was telling her, I was like, am I doing? Is this crazy? Should I really be in another country? trying to live it up and trying to still build the first entity of this services and the offerings and have the coffee chats virtually. I was have sleepless nights in those 2 months when I was living in Spain, trying to before I started the business. And I remember my friend saying, listen, the work will always be here. To enjoy this rest because you have to have rest in order to be successful. So she was like, don't worry about if this was a good idea or not. Just try to be present. And when I took that advice, I remember it was someone in my network who reached out to me over text message when I was out there. And she's like, hey, I saw your post. I know you're on your own now. Would you be open to a crowd support? And it was like when you do let go a little bit, and I'm not saying that it takes away the fear, but when you let go a little bit, when you trust a little more, when you're doing actions, like it's not like you can sleep and do nothing. I was taking actions, I was having the calls, I was building out ideology or potential service offerings. So I was doing work, but I was still terrified that I was making a mistake. It's the trust, I would say, that helped me continue to move forward because I was scared the entire time. And when I was able to lean into that trust because I was doing something, it wasn't like I was sitting and doing nothing. I was able to continue to move forward and things were coming my way. I was scared the whole time. And it wasn't just about who would hire me, but I think it was just who am I to be this person, to have my own business, which is why I go back to that first question. It took a year before I felt like I
Yeah.
wasn't dreaming this anymore. Is no joke. And I think it's a
Yes.
lifelong journey. And I'm feel grateful to be humble enough to know that it's not always it, but I was scared the whole time. And I think you're going to be scared and do it anyways.
Let's give the audience some simple
Yeah.
things here. Give me your simple starter system. If someone had 7 days to get their life
Okay.
together, what are 3 things that you would have them set up? What are 3
Right.
things?
Problem you're solving. Right. And in
Mhm.
the context of entrepreneurship, trying to move forward in something, what is the problem you're solving? Talk to the people who are experiencing the problem and really try to just create a simple plan. And the plan has to do with what does monetization look like with this plan?
I
It's not
love it.
about giving out your services for free. I'm not for that personally. Between figuring out the problem you're solving, talking to people, and then making sure the plan has some sort of monetary opportunity. Those are the 3 steps I would start with because getting into building the LLC and getting a bank account and creating an EIN that's later. Those are the
Right.
3 things. And I really do think plans activate you. This is coming from my operator brain. Operations, you need to have a plan to execute. I love visionary folks, but you've got to say, okay, tomorrow we're going to do this. And the next day we're going to do that. And the next day we're going to do that. So
I love it. I think a lot of times we can say, I'm a visionary person, but I'm also an executor. That visionary side of me can stay in the visionary land. I can be over the land for a
Totally.
while. And then I'm like, reel me back in. When are we going to
Mhm.
do something and start
Right.
putting some things in place and start taking some action? And I think
Mhm.
that a lot of people, somebody could be listening to this while they're driving in their car right now. And so I think it's important for them to understand that you can't just say the plan. You got to do the
Mhm.
plan.
The
You
plan.
after. I
Mhm.
love what you said. You were like, listen, I didn't just sit back and just watch this thing. I was in motion. I was
Mhm.
doing things. I was making the calls. I was building my systems. I was monetizing. I was thinking
Mhm.
of ways that I can make money. How can I monetize this? How much money should I be expecting to get from this? Doing
Right.
that competitive analysis and just really honing in on all of these things. Now
Yeah.
we're running out of time and I love our
Totally.
conversation, but I really want to talk about the trap of being over prepared or preparation because as
Mm.
women, especially women of color, we're
Mhm.
often taught that we have to over deliver before we feel that we can be allowed to feel confident. I mean, I was having a
Right.
conversation with a woman just a couple of days ago, and she was telling me how she felt like she wasn't the best at what she could do because she was comparing and she felt like she had to achieve all these
Right.
different things in order for her to feel confident. How do you know when preparation is wisdom and when preparation
Mhm.
is dressed up as
Right.
productivity? Decipher that. These are some of the things that I think we think, oh, if I prepare 100 things, that's me being wise. But I'm down to number 50 and done anything. So
Right.
why haven't I done anything with all of this preparation? When am I going to start moving to a place where I move beyond the fear and really start being productive and doing something. How do you know when preparation is wisdom and when preparation is fear that is dressed up as productivity?
Fear because you feel like you're not prepared enough to be able to take that leap or take that next step. Sometimes it's tough because I am a perfectionist, so I am almost the worst person to ask this question. But my learnings is sometimes giving yourself a timeline, because when you go past that timeline, it's like, listen, even if we're not 100%, we're doing it. We're launching and we're launching, learn from it. For me, I knew that when I took those 2 months, and this is just from my personal experience, when I was going to give myself those 2 months, is almost like a mix of a sabbatical preparation. I said, when I get back,
Mhm.
it's grind. I got to have something in. It was literally the month of September. I said, I was lucky enough to close something when I wasn't even home, which was the best blessing I could ever experience. But if I didn't do that, I said, September is my month. So I need to be outside, I need to be doing all these things in order to ensure that something closes by the end of September. Now, I could see that same thought process being used for if you're preparing, I need a problem. You talk to the people, you did your discovery, and now you're implementing your plan, or maybe you're not implementing your plan because you want to wait until you build out your plan. How long are you going to give yourself to build out your plan? Is it going to be 1 month? How long are you going to give yourself for customer discovery? Are you 1 month or 6 months? 6 months is too long, period. You have to be intentional. If your answer is 6 months, that was too long. So I think if you're someone who knows that fear might come up in a number of different ways, whether it's imposter syndrome, whether it's preparedness, how could you combat it? Sometimes with a timeline. And sometimes I remember I had a client or one of their team members, he was head of engineering, and he was like, just ship it. That's one of our values. Just ship it. I don't care if it's 100%. It'd be 30%. Ship it. Learn from it. Taking that mentality as well. So one of the examples is creating a time frame, but another one is just have the energy of ship it. It's
Mhm.
not about waiting till when you create that plan, give myself a month. What if you give yourself a day? What can you do in a day? Even if it's only 30% of your plan that's done, ship it. Start executing it. See what happens, and then you learn from it. So I don't know. Those are two thoughts that come up for me
I
as
love it.
because it's a hard one. Easier said than done.
I love it because you're right. It is easier said than done. So here's what I want us to do. We've got a couple more moments in this session, and I want us to give this audience an assignment. So
Okay.
let's give the listeners a 48-hour assignment, something that they can
Mm,
do in the next 2 days that creates real momentum. It could be something that they write down. It could be something that they stop doing. It could be something that they ask for. What is
mm,
something that you want to challenge this community to do in the next 48 hours to drive
yeah.
momentum forward for themselves?
First thing is identify the thing you're scared to say yes to. It could be a relationship or to seeking out a partner or starting a business. It could be any. And that's why I want to keep it broad, because I think sometimes when you think, oh, am I quitting my job? That gets a little intimidating, because when you practice saying yes to small things, it's easier to say yes to big things. So any yes that
Yeah.
comes up, identify that. And in those next 48 hours, what are 3 things you could do that will help you get to that yes? They could be small. It could be, for me, I'm going to go back to my example of saying yes to quitting the job. I knew I was scared. So maybe I need to set up a therapy appointment because I know I'm scared, or maybe I need to write out a quick plan to understand what are people hiring me for? What am I good at? I'm a big proponent of doing some research. And when you get to that point of what can I do in 48 hours, answer this or help me get to this. I'm not sure if we're an AI friendly podcast, but I am someone who says,
I
hey,
am.
ask them to help you create 3 steps, whether you get outside help from research, LLM tools, 3 steps to help you get to the yes, and know that the yes can be small.
I love it. Celeste, thank you so much. This conversation is powerful because it tells the truth. Courage isn't reckless, it is intentional. And we all
Mhm.
need that in our lives. So, to anyone that is listening, if you've been waiting to feel fearless before you move, I want you to hear this. You don't need fear to disappear before you move. You just
Mhm.
need a container that can hold your yes. And if you want to build that container with support, this is what is for. This is what our community is for. It's no pressure, no performance, just real movement by real people. And I love Celeste today, and I hope you all loved it. So please make sure that you comment and let us know what you think about it. And if you have that 48-hour assignment, I want you to let us know what you're doing, one thing that you're going to accomplish within the next 48 hours to make this momentum drive you forward. And just like Celeste said, it doesn't have to be around entrepreneurship. We say yes to so many things in our lives. It's that commitment to moving towards your purpose and whatever that looks like. It could be self care, it could be taking that trip. If you've been wanting to take a trip for 20 years, well, now is your opportunity to take that trip. If you've been wanting to build new relationships, now is your opportunity to say yes to that. But now, don't just say yes, put some action behind it. You heard it straight from Celeste. So next time we're talking about what happens after when excitement wears off, because consistency is where most people fall apart. Celeste, let me give you an opportunity to share some closing remarks with our audience here. Tell us a little bit about your business and some things that are going on
Yes.
with you as we get ready to wind down today's session.
Sure thing. Thank you so much for having me. And the real takeaway for me is trust. I really think when you trust in your intuition and trust in your experiences and trust in your community, you're really able to lean into your than you could ever believe and it all into place. So definitely I'm an operations wizard. But I'm an operator at heart. I love supporting visionary founders. It's really important to me to see solutions come to fruition and to execute those on behalf of visionary founders. So I'm a fractional operator who helps both founders as well as VC firms. On the VC side, I help build out portfolio management strategies and execute community and event strategies as well. Just really love supporting visionary folks. So if you ever are looking for that type of support, always happy to connect. I also love to be a connector. So if there are people in my network who I can connect you to, I love being a part of the journey. So thank you so much for having me again. And I just really hope that folks take planning into consideration when they're saying yes to something, because the operator in me knows that a plan is always going to help us get to the next step.
I love it. Well, thank you all so much for joining me today. And thanks, Celeste. Please scan that QR code at the top of the screen to get in contact with Celeste. If you are in need of her services or you just want to know more about what she's doing, please make that contact today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Power of Yes.